But the camera is kind of far away. Usually they have cameras in their faces.
Yeah, he's talking about football interviews. This is like a football interview, but at Bing.
Yes.
A quick hello to start the show. Welcome to the show, Ali Alvi.
Thank you, Barnard.
Great. That's the best name I've heard all day.
All right.
I love your name.
Oh, thank you.
Ali Alvi. Just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
Yes.
Brilliant.
Just like the boxer. People say, is it Ali or Ali? I'm saying it's Ali like the boxer.
All right, okay. Yeah. And Alvi like?
Like my dad.
Brilliant. Great stuff. We're at the Bing offices, looking out over Seattle. You're the team lead or one of the team people at Q&A?
Yes, I am the lead PM for the team that does Q&A in Bing, also captions. And I'm
captions?
also like the snippets that you see under the URLs on the like the search results page.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so
you mean under the blue links,
yes,
descriptions?
Yes.
Meta descriptions that are pulled in?
Yeah.
That's part of Q&A?
They could be generated as well, yes.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so the team, basically the algorithms that we use to kind of generate the snippets are the same algorithms we use to do Q&A.
Okay.
That's why Google calls it feature snippets, because they have a snippet and they just feature it. We have somewhat of a different... Yeah.
You're saying this is an answer to a question?
Yeah.
Which is more explicit?
Yeah, and then like we don't, like when you look at the architecture, it's not entirely, we're not taking a snippet and featuring it. We actually do a lot more sometimes. So it just broadly, kind of falls into the category of when a user comes and asks a question or a query that looks like a question that we can directly answer. That's my team. I'm the lead PM for the team that does that.
Okay.
In addition to that, I'm also the lead PM for this high ambition AI initiative called Project Turing.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Tell me what it is, because I've forgotten.
So it's Microsoft's, especially within Bing, there's a team of scientists, applied researchers, who are working on high ambition natural language processing algorithms.
Okay.
And those algorithms are being, we are kind of like the hub for those algorithms for all of Microsoft.
Sorry, it's a different team to the Q&A team. You're head of two teams.
That same team provides some of the models that we use in Q&A.
Right, okay, so there's crossover, but it's
think
not...
of it like a horizontal team that provides the brains for a lot of these scenarios, and Q&A is one of them.
So you're the brains behind Bing.
Well, no, I wouldn't go that far.
That's a great phrase.
I represent the brilliant minds who are the minds behind Bing. Yeah.
Brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, and so for the Q&A, I mean, if you like, my journey to here was I asked Gary Illyes from Google, is there a separate algorithm for the feature snippet?
Yep.
And he said very dryly, no. But I will explain how it works. And then he explained it, which was wonderful of him. And the idea, and this is the thing, is you've got the basic algorithm for the blue links,
yep.
the main algorithm, and you guys have this kind of module that chunks on the side of it,
yep.
which has different features or the same features but with different weightings.
So, yeah, I mean, maybe I should take a step back.
Okay.
Absolutely correct.
Have I gone too fast?
No.
Too
I mean,
soon?
because you went to the features and the things that make it go to the top. Before that, I mean, yes, absolutely, we have an algorithm. Search engines historically have been just the 10 blue links.
Yeah.
And that's how it was for like 15 years or so. Like Q&A or feature snippets started coming around about 3 to 4 years ago.
Okay.
So the idea is exactly that. We have a query. We get to a point where we narrow it down to here are all the 10, 15, 20 documents that are most relevant to it. Q&A basically just says, now that we have these documents, can we have the machines go in and read through these documents and do some comprehension on top of it, and now get the specific part within those documents that actually answers this question right on the spot.
So Q&A is actually based on the results underneath it.
Absolutely.
Whereas the video or the images or the knowledge panel is based on completely other factors.
Because, Q&A by...
Oh, sorry, Minaz was just saying about the verticals. And in fact, it's saying we've got different verticals, different... I'm beginning to understand.
Yes.
And you guys are on the vertical of the blue links and you're just going, what can we pull out that gives a definitive answer?
But
definitive?
Well, it depends on the question. Okay. If you ask me a question that how, tall is the Eiffel Tower, that's a very definitive, right? But then sometimes you can ask us like, things which are not like, what is an average salary for a computer scientist in Seattle?
$25,000 a month. I've got no idea. I just said a number.
I wish it was that number. But I mean, so for those things, there's no definitive answer. So sometimes we give a range. You can also ask questions which are very subjective, like, oh, what is the, what vegetables take the shortest amount of time to grow or are the best for this kind of a climate? And then there's no one right answer in those cases. So it can be in range, but think of it every time you have a question in your mind rather than just, looking for something that is broad and saying, oh, I'm going to go and survey like 25 different sites. That's not when you want Q&A. You want Q&A when you're like, okay, I have a question. I want just either a direct answer or I want an answer that, gives me enough information that I know exactly what I want to go after that.
Okay, so I've been saying, let's look at, if you want Bing to put you number one, you're asking Bing to recommend your content as the solution to the problem or the answer to the question. Yep. And the feature snippet is saying, it's not recommending, it's saying this is the answer that we have found to be the most accurate.
Yeah, I mean, this is not like Bing, and when you have a feature snippet or when you have a Q&A, this is one of those things where it becomes tricky. From a user's perspective, they think that, Bing is now telling me that this is it.
Yeah.
But the reality is, this is the best we think. Given the context that we found, this is what we think is the best thing that answers your question. This is not like Bing is telling you that the answer to your question is this.
Okay.
And so sometimes we do get it wrong, and people like Bing gave me the wrong information.
But isn't that a sign that people trust you and Google?
Yes.
And we've got to the point now where we just go, okay, that must be the answer. And when it's wrong, we get really upset about it.
Absolutely.
Or we laugh at you.
And that's my part of my job is essentially to channel that emotion or the sentiment that the users have, and go and drive that empathy of user through the whole product, saying, even though this is the website that we thought was giving the best answer, the reality is the answer is either not correct, or maybe it was off topic, or maybe it could be hurting people's sensibilities. And when that does happen, the users perceive it as something that Bing is doing. So we have to really own the message when we put something at the top.
And do you get a lot of direct feedback from people on the SERP?
All the time.
I mean, that was a pained expression.
Yes. Q&A, well, I know we get it right a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But we do get it wrong.
But you get your face kind of stuck in the mud.
So we don't nearly get as much feedback for when we get it right. But when we do get it wrong, we do get a lot of feedback.
Well, it's like bad reviews for a company, isn't it?
Exactly. And we do have this thing where we have a bunch of different initiatives where we go in and we make sure we are as close to the customer as possible, and we call it zero distance to our customers.
Right. Okay.
One of those things is going and talking to people, like doing user surveys, bringing them in house and asking them questions. Another thing is any feedback that we get, we must respond internally at least to direct it to the right people and make sure that there's some action being taken. So that is a huge part of the job of program managers or product managers, is to go through and dig through all of those months or weeks of feedback, categorizing.
So you read this stuff?
We read everything that comes in.
And all the rude things people say?
Yes, everything. Right. And I mean, of course, we do understand that it's a skewed sample set. Of course, people don't, every time they get the answer right, they're not taking the time to say, this was great. Sometimes they do. I mean, it's always fantastic when
I'm going to do that now. Later on, I'm going to go in, hi, Ali, this answer was great.
So we do go in and, you realize that the same thing can, you can give one answer. And it goes back to the point where sometimes things are not definitive. So you can give an answer that might satisfy half the population, but then it might upset the other half. So we have to be very careful. And then, kind of before the interview, you were talking about sometimes you give multiple answers.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes an attempt to make sure that, this is not something where we can, satisfy 100% of our users with this one thing. So we can give them an option to say, okay, here's a couple of different answers that might be on point to this question.
Okay. Yeah. Now, back to the idea, it's based on the blue links. Right? We've got our list of blue links, and you say, okay, from these blue links, I'm going to choose one as the definitive, the answer that we feel is most appropriate in the circumstances with the candidate. Yeah. What are the features? I'm trying to use the word features and not factors. Yeah. What are the features that you feed into the machine learning algorithms that are the most important for that? I mean, I would immediately think expertise, authority, and trust. Which
I was going to, flip the question around. I was like, as a user, when you come and ask Bing a question, what would you say makes a good answer?
Well, I would imagine that you would be looking at expertise, authority, and trust. I mean, the answer needs to be right. Sorry, accuracy.
Relevance. Yeah, we call it relevance. Okay. Yeah. I mean, accuracy is a hard thing to judge.
Good point.
Right.
Well, accuracy, kind of what I keep hearing is accuracy based on accepted opinion.
Yeah.
And so you need to figure out what accepted opinion is, and then...
That's like the biggest part of my job is to define exactly that. What is that metric? Right. You know, I know one of the things that you asked for before the interview was how do you measure accuracy? And that's like fundamentally as the product
owner... You keep saying before the interview, I asked you loads of questions.
Yes.
Sounds like I prepped you, but I didn't. I didn't prep you.
You didn't prep me, but you know, I know that you had like top of mind things that you were thinking about, and you know, even if you had not mentioned the word accuracy, that's as a product manager for an AI team, where there's not real we don't write code, we write algorithms. And the way to define and can make sure that the AI does the right thing is by defining the right metrics to measure the AI.
Right, okay.
And that responsibility is 100% on the product manager and the team of product managers that own that product. So my job is to really take what is the definition that for our given user or any user of whether this is the right answer or is a good answer, and taking that and distilling it down into what we call a metric. Okay. And then I am the guy who's responsible for defining that metric and holding the entire team accountable for meeting that metric. So I am basically the gatekeeper for making sure whether the AI goes out the door or not.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So the metric is the secret sauce.
Yes.
That you would never tell me, I assume.
Well, yeah, but it's not that, you already said what it was.
Did I?
Yeah, you said it has to be relevant, it has to be authoritative, it has to be trustworthy, it has to be not offensive, it has to be fresh. So all of those, those are all the. So when we started this conversation, you were like, "Oh, so what are the features?" And I said, maybe let me take a step back. And now I'm coming back to that.
You're very good at this. Yes. You should be doing the interview. We've got this the wrong way around.
And the fact that you're telling me all the right things about what makes a good answer, maybe you should be a product manager.
We'll swap jobs. We could totally switch you go off on the road around the world. Yeah.
No. So what I wanted to say was the Q&A in Bing is one of the most in terms of AI technology, the most advanced, part of the product. And when I say advanced, it's mainly by that I don't mean the other people are not doing stuff that's cutting edge. We are using almost entirely neural networks and deep learning based solutions. So when you, by definition, when you talk about deep learning, then that means we don't know what the features are. So the machine basically just take in text.
Yeah.
They get the query, they get the passages that we give them, and they come back and tell us this is the one that you should show.
So sorry, I was talking to Nagu at SMX London last year, and he was saying, there's no point in asking me what the ranking factors are or the features are. Because
I remember that, how he danced around that question multiple times, and you persisted. But
you listened to the episode?
Yeah, I heard that episode.
He was lovely about it.
I was very proud of him. I was like, Barnard came at him 5 different times, surprisingly as well. Sometimes
I'm trying to be kinder today. But so what I now hear then is you're saying you as a team are saying this is a question, this is the answer that we consider to be correct, and you do a big long list of those.
Yeah.
Feed into the machine saying these are the metrics we're looking for.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yes, and now you can see if the metric is not correct, the machine will obviously just latch on to whatever the metric is saying. So it's when you talk about deep learning and neural networks, end-to-end systems of AI, all you get is data in, and then you get a label out.
So this is really end-to-end machine learning.
Yes, pretty much end-to-end AI. Yeah, it's neural networks, and mostly I don't know if you're familiar with the algorithms that are out, transformer-based deep neural networks for natural language.
No idea.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's a very popular term
But there are probably people who are listening who do know what you're talking about.
So because of that, the nature of the algorithms is you cannot really define what it will do except for controlling what data goes into it, and then controlling, what the output it shows and how it's measured.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good point. Sorry, it reminds me of 2 things. One of which is I used to say, let's just imagine Bing and Google, this black box. Don't even bother trying to understand it. The art of what we're doing as marketers is saying, if I can predict what will come out according to what I put in, I don't need to understand all the stuff in the middle.
Exactly.
Which was before when it was still if else, if else, if else.
Yeah.
But now there's no way I can understand it.
Yes.
So there's no point even trying.
Yes. Well, the models that we have in production have hundreds of millions of parameters. Okay. There's no way you can actually go in and even understand and this is basically just millions of floating point numbers. Looking at them, you get an absolute negative. The only way to measure it is give it input and measure the output. And,
Sorry, that means that's what we should be doing as marketers, and we should forget about the bits in the middle. And
Yes.
Brilliant. And so the other thing is, with machine learning, every time it runs slightly differently because it's learned from the past run.
Yes.
So it's never the same algorithm twice in a row.
There is predictability to some extent.
Okay.
But yeah, because the
Am I
models
overdoing
But as we train the models or retrain the models, the more data it sees. Like since we build on top of the ranking stack, if the ranking changes, everything else changes. So the input changes. If you change the query a little bit, now the entire, like as far as the machine is concerned, it looks different. Like the thing that came in is not the same as the thing that was there before. So it's very hard to predict. And that's part of the job that we have as program managers, product managers, is to bring that predictability, bring that reliability, that trust, that correctness into the system. And the only way to do that is by defining and really holding the teams accountable to a metric. That is a reflection of our users.
What I find interesting with that is actually very human.
Yes.
At the end of the day, we've got all these machines, but it's actually human, and you guys are taking the bullet every time it goes wrong.
Yes. So, I mean, like Maria and Frederick were at this conference, I think, SEO conference, where I think Frederick, they had a slide which says, AI is built for humans, by humans.
Yeah.
So for humans is all of our users, of course. By humans, by what they mean by that is not like we are not writing code, but we are the humans which are actually containing and defining the guardrails in which this AI has to operate. So if we give it the data, we get to decide what kind of data goes into the system. We get to decide what we label as good or bad output of the system. So it's entirely in our control to control what kind of biases that get amplified by the system, what kind of input is missing, what data voids are there in our that the system has never seen. So though that's a human aspect, that's the part where we say it's being built by humans because we control what we should.
And that's a huge responsibility.
It is, yeah.
That weighs heavily on your shoulders.
Yes, and then and especially when you take that and amplify it right at the top, at the top position, and then imagine like we power scenarios for smart assistants. So if you ask something from Cortana, for example, what Cortana speaks back could actually be powered by the same algorithm that we. And now the user doesn't see a URL or any text. They just say, I asked Cortana a question and Cortana responded back to me.
But then you're also now at the start of this idea of a task-based journey, which is the discussion with Cortana will be task-based, and you're the guys who are going to be feeding that.
Yes.
So that's even bigger responsibility.
Yep.
Oh my Lord, you're right at the front of it. Oh, I'd be scared. So I don't want to change jobs after all. I've just changed my mind.
I think you'll be good at it. You should think about it.
Well, Mike, sorry, I have a question about EAT, expertise, authority, and trust, or the idea of trust, or the idea of authority. In order to be able to judge that, you have to have understood the entity.
Yeah.
Therefore, in order to be able to judge any EAT on me or my company, you have to have my name or my company in your knowledge graph to leverage the EAT, and without that, EAT means nothing. Is that a correct statement?
We don't rely heavily on the knowledge graph.
Okay.
I mean, some of our answers do come from knowledge graph. The AI that I was talking about is basically working on unstructured data. So basically all the 100 billion URLs or documents in the world.
Yeah.
But the way we build authority is, of course, by building on top of the ranking stack. Some of that comes implicitly by saying, okay, ranking things, these are the top 10 documents that are most relevant for this. So authority trust is also a responsibility that we hold the ranking team very accountable for. But on top of that, then we actually make sure the signals that ranking has, all these documents come back with their own signals. What is the quality of this document? What is the trust score, or what is the rank for this document? We take those into account, and then we do, like, these neural networks are very good at figuring out if the query was asking about a specific entity, is that entity present in this answer? And if that a good match or not? And then we rely on the other signals that say, okay, the domain also has the same. Like if you're asking about Bank of America and the URL is from Bank of America, chances are the trust is going to be high. And we don't explicitly say any of this. The machines, by giving them the right amount of data, the AI figures this out.
So, because my question was actually saying, it needs to understand the entity that's giving the answer in order to be able to apply expertise, authority, and trust. And you're saying, actually, no, not really.
Yeah.
It's implicit within the content.
Yeah. The way
what's more important, what's more important is to understand the entities that are being mentioned in the text that correspond to the answer that I'm looking to provide.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's all implicit. We don't explicitly do anything. There are things that we do explicitly, and those are mostly to prevent really bad things from happening. So there are some interventions that we have that are, making sure that, if something offensive comes up, we have filters that can say, okay, you know what, even though this seems like the most relevant thing for the that the user asked for, this might not be the best thing that we want to go and promote at the top. So we get rid of those things. It could be hate speech, could be fake stuff, could be offensive or, adult stuff. So those are things where we do have interventions, because it's very hard for machines to a single system to know all of those things. You have to have some kind of guardrail, and those are the guardrails I was talking about.
Well, when you've got guardrails for the machine along the route, then it provides the answer. You've got a filter to say, actually...
Yes, exactly.
They've got a filter system to suggest...
To suppress, suppress.
And that's a human judgment that you're making.
Yes.
And that's your responsibility.
That's our
and
responsibility.
You make those from a lot from the feedback?
Yes, a lot from, we ground everything in what the users think is right or wrong. So a lot of this comes from feedback, or just asking people, in these user surveys, or at least as a product manager, my job is to say, okay, what do I think the product opinion should be? Should we get into the business of answering this kind of a query or not? Because one of the great things about Q&A is user can ask a question, we can choose not to answer it. Right? So that's what I tell my team is we don't have to trigger for 100% of the queries that users ask. Yep. Frederick doesn't have that liberty. He has to show something, like the result.
That's true, yeah.
So for us, it's a choice that we make, and that choice has to be made in a responsible fashion. Because when we do get it wrong, the consequences are, in my opinion, worse than what, if you show blue links that are kind of not. So
the filter is actually two things. One is corporate responsibility or corporate image, corporate serving its clients in a way that its clients would want to be served. Yeah. And the second is some kind of algorithm built from the feedback from the users when people complain.
Yeah. Most of these, the filters are also internally are AI algorithms that have been trained. So for adult, we have...
you don't just press on the button and say, that's rubbish, we're not having that.
Yeah. So it's mostly is it starts off maybe with that, say, this was a bad thing, we shouldn't have shown it, and you accumulate that data, then you expand on that data, say, okay, can I get a big enough data set that is representative of this class of issues? And then train an AI model, and then that AI model is able to do this on the fly. You don't have to even worry about now, monitoring every single answer, right?
Yeah, okay. And another question, which is probably completely outside anything you want to answer, but people in my industry, in the digital marketing space, are getting worried about the fact that people aren't coming to their sites because they're getting the answer with you. Have you got anything you would say to them about that isn't rude?
I do understand why that sentiment exists, but the reality is everybody is trying so hard to get to the algo at one, right? And this is actually putting you above everything else.
Yeah.
So in a way, if the site has good content, reliable content, and is very relevant to the user's question, it's almost impossible for us to answer every single question with 200 characters at the top. So a lot of the times users will click through, and we actually do have a very high click-through rate on the top of the Q&A block. So it is diverting traffic to you rather than you being at algo at 5 or 7 or maybe outside the serve page. So it goes both ways. Sometimes user will be satisfied and say, oh yeah, this is great. But then I would argue that in a subconscious way, it's actually bringing some kind of a trust in that domain. They say, oh, I saw an answer from this URL or this website and it was good. Maybe next time they will actually be more likely to click on it.
Yeah, and if I can get my brand name into that featured Q&A, then I'm getting branding. And because Bing is saying, I trust the answer from this brand, by association, you're giving me kudos.
And it's kudos, and it's also, statistically, the traffic does go to the websites because we have a very high click-through rate.
Well, Google have just taken off the second link in the page, and people are complaining about that.
Yes, we don't have that. If you're appearing on the blue links, you still are there.
Yeah.
Google, I understand, have moved it outside of the top 10.
Yeah, they've said we take the second link out.
Because they think that it's unfair to have double representation. If you were one of 10 and you actually were the best, I would argue that you should get double.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Well, fair enough.
But I mean, I'm not in the business of making that decision. That's probably in the purview of the team that decides what blue links to show.
Yeah.
But I can certainly say that.
All right, that would be Frederick Debou's decision.
So, well, Frederick or somebody above
Both
of us. Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah. Excuse me.
But in the ranking team, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But we work very closely together. Like we have had these conversations ever since Google has done that. We've had the conversation of saying, what is our strategy around treating Q&A? Because a lot of the time, the stuff that we show at the top is not in the algo block. So,
oh right, it's on page 2.
It could be on page 2. It could not be even there.
Because I mean, a lot of people. Come back to that. A lot of people were arguing it had to be on page 1, but you're now saying it could be on page 2 or not even in there at all.
In the case,
it's got to be somewhere in the blue links because you said you're building on top of the blue links.
A lot. Well, it becomes
I'm trying to trick you.
No. So we always build on top of the blue links, and most of the time it's done on the actual live set of blue links.
Yeah.
But sometimes we've shown an answer which has been good. We will memorize it.
Right.
And now when we show it, that URL might not be, ranking might have changed over time. So there's a chance when that might not be on the top or in part of the 10 blue links. It will be somewhere in the ranking. I just cannot guarantee that it will be in the 10.
Oh, okay.
The other thing is when we use, we alluded to this for a little bit, sometimes we use our knowledge graph. Knowledge graph answers by definition are not coming from the
No.
links,
Okay.
So
they're coming from
the original question that I alluded to was how high is the Eiffel Tower? We can easily go get the entity for Eiffel Tower from our situation.
And then you just stick a knowledge graph block
instead of and that thing will never be like. There will be other URLs that talk about the height of the Eiffel Tower, but
it won't be the same source.
Thing. Yeah. So those are the subtle things that we have to decide. Like we cannot just treat this as another blue link just at the position 1.
Okay.
Google probably has a different way of going about this, so
certainly.
they can do this.
All right, well, I've got one last question, because Frederick's going like that outside. He's saying, this is it. I was talking to Fabrice about the way he annotates the data that they put in the database. If the blue link comes up with something and the answer isn't in the meta title, meta description, you just go down, pull the annotation out and stick it in there.
Absolutely. So that's the algorithm. When I talked about like the high ambition AI stuff that we do, we have algorithms that are that we call machine comprehension and machine reading. We can give you an entire, like this algorithm, the entire web page, and basically say, here's an entire, 1,000 sentences of a web page, and here's a question. Can you go and read through this entire document and figure out what is the best part of this web page that is answering this question? And that, when I say high ambition and cutting edge AI, those kinds of algorithms are not even, like even in academia, you won't be able to find some of those things. So that's the applied science and researchers that we have. They're able to build these algorithms on these natural language techniques that can do those things. Oh. So we are really teaching machines how to read and comprehend and understand.
But I mean, you depend initially on Fabrice's annotations to create blocks and be able to bring these blocks out. And secondly, on your own natural language.
So we rely on Fabrice, and his team does some really amazing work that we actually absolutely rely on. We cannot build these algorithms on just raw HTML. We need to extract what we call, document body. And once you have a text, which is just basically the web page's text, we can go in and then, extract anything out of it. And sometimes Fabrice's team also helps us by saying, okay, we think these are relevant passages or paragraphs in there. So you might want to treat them as one entity. But in some cases, we don't even need that. We can just go in and say, okay, give us the entire document, and we'll just go and read it like a human does, and figure out what are the 2 or 3 parts of the document that make most sense, and we'll put them together. And
which Fabrice or the algo blue link algo team doesn't do.
They don't do, but going back to the first point, which was I'm also the lead PM for the captions team, which is the snippets. We do use the same technology to now show the relevant.
Which explains why when I've got a rubbish meta description or it doesn't contain the keyword, you just dig down, pull something else out, and stick in there. That's the best conclusion of the whole lot. A quick goodbye to end the show. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you, Barnard.
That was an amazing insight at the end. I love it. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.